Well, hello everyone. My name is John Doering, and this is ZoomTRAK. Good afternoon, and welcome to the February 2024 installment of NRail's ZoomTRAK. ZoomTRAK is the monthly online gathering for us as NRail members, and it's great to see everyone here. We are the faithful of N-Scale, gathered together on a Saturday afternoon. Still cold up here in New England for me. I'm sure the coming spring is becoming somewhat evident for some of you in other places. As you know, NRail is the organization promoting N-scale model railroading. That's modular modeling in the N-TRaK and T-TRAK and Fremo N standards, home and club layouts, and indeed much, much more well beyond the layout. NRail
Mike,
is
you have the
focused
scissors? Yep. Okay.
on sharing the knowledge, camaraderie, and joy of model railroading, and all of it in the normal scale. So welcome again, everyone. We've got a full lineup to share with you today. The program looks like this. We'll start with a special announcement from Jacksonville Terminal. Then we have Talking T-TRAK with Terry Moore. Some information on virtual Railfan from Mike Sear. And then the Arduino Fast Clock with Thomas Rackers. And we'll end with some information on T-TRAK design software, but not just for T-TRAK, with Steve Jackson. As always, we'll end with a poll and try to wrap the program up right around the top of the hour. Usually a few people will stay on and ask questions and such. I would encourage you to hold your questions till the end, but also use the chat feature. If you type in information or questions and such, I'll try to keep up with that as we move through the program today. So let's start with our special announcement from Jacksonville Terminal. All right, well, let's call an audible then here, Chief, and moving on to item number 2, Talking T-TRAK.
Welcome to Talkin T-TRAK. This time we're going to talk about the diamond junction. Diamonds can be a train's best friend or the creation of a disaster. The diamond junction. All track pieces are standard unmodified Cato pieces. The turnouts are number 6, and those small straight pieces are 29 millimeters. The curves are as my large junction design, with the turnouts replacing the 15-degree 7/18 millimeter radius curve track. Other track pieces used are as labeled in the diagram. Wiring. The green dots at the track joiners are power feeder drops. There's 20 of them, actually. Insulated rail joiners are shown by the black triangles. The tracks were designated red and yellow for future layout wiring reference. Notice all the 3-way extension cords. All power leads are connected together with only one plug out for normal layout inclusion. Everything is all red bus. The crossing is controlled by 2 4-pole double-throw center-off toggle switches on opposite corners for accessibility. The indicating lights are powered by track power, indicating which through route is off. These can be replaced with more prototypical signal lights at a later time if desired, but they might not be so easy to see. The removable board is a foot, allowing the module to stand on end without protruding track end damage. Model railroading can be like watching fish in a tank, trains running around loops, or playing with your dog, operations. At model railroad shows, we often can't do more than run around loops watching fish in a tank, which can be relaxing or release us to do other things. But more complex layouts allow us to play with our dog, operations, that can be similar to role-playing games as we emulate real railroad operations as best we can in our miniature world. The layout using my alternate escape track corners. More straight modules can be added to lengthen the yard and other loops, and more loops can be added also, creating a complex and challenging large layout. This allows the yard to be a separate entity, like external staging. The train route map. With appropriate switching, one train can go everywhere. With such a large layout, several DCC trains can be included with proper dispatching. 6 loops are available for individual trains that don't want to interact with the possibilities of the entire layout. The red loop always has the option of entering the yard or not. The pink loop has the option of leaving the yard and enter the red loop or not. The red loop can absorb the bottom brown loop. The green and blue loops can become one blue loop. This is the reason for the diamond junction concept, to create an interface between 4 separate layouts of 4 independent displayers to allow them to showcase their own group or club and have the option of operating trains on their home display or travel the world provided by their fellow T-TRAKers. The outer loops of all branches, the diamond junction, and the single rows of modules of the spines that join them all are supplied by the red bus. All branch inner loops would be on their own yellow bus and use the electrical supply of choice. Dead rail protection may not prevent crashes. Depending on the length of the dead rail zone, automatic or manual protection may not be enough. As an oncoming train approaches the diamond with dead rail protection protecting the occupied crossing, the front loco bridges the insulated rail joiner, energizing the dead rail, keeping the front loco powered. As the train continues to move forward, the front loco is unpowered as it no longer bridges the gap. The second loco continues to push, and then it bridges the insulated rail joiner, energizing the dead rail, powering the front loco, and both continue moving the train forward until the second loco no longer bridges the gap, de-energizing the dead rail zone. Train momentum may push the locos forward, contacting the train occupying the diamond. My Thunder on Rails T-TRAK layout. The Diamond Junction prototype in action. All we did was watch fish, but I did steal a train from the right loop to the left loop, leaving a friend wondering where his train went. Now that the concept and build have been proven, it's time for scenery. NRail's vice president, Andy Zimmerman, couldn't wait for concept proofing, so he built his own diamond junction. At over 3 feet by 3 feet, he had plenty of scenic space shown nearing completion here. Thanks for watching.
Wow. Super cool.
All right.
So Andy, you built yours already.
Yep.
Works okay?
I have not tested it. I've tested electrically, but I have not tested it in a T-TRAK layout yet.
That's fantastic. And we'll move to the next thing on our list, which is virtual Railfan. Mike, you with us?
I'm here. How are you guys?
Fantastic. Tell
I
us
see
about virtual
everybody-
Railfan.
Yeah. So, in case, for those of you that don't know, Virtual Railfan is a service. We've got about 108 live cameras that cover 31 states. Right now, we're streaming to an average of about 12 million viewers a month, which I mean that seems insane. It was even crazier during COVID. We were doing better than most of the major stations out there, north of 22 million viewers a month, while everybody was locked down. Obviously you guys being modelers, one thing that I think a lot of our modeling folks at Virtual Railfan actually utilize a service to build prototypes and stuff that they see out there, and day-to-day life, so to speak, both for graffiti and different freight car loads, things like that. But then again, there's also that faction of folks that just love trains and want to watch. So we've got nothing but time here. Like I said, 108 cameras across 31 states. There's always a train coming. Our website members have the ability to go back and watch footage up to 10 days in case they missed something or are looking for something specific. And also offers you like a custom dashboard. I'm not sure if am I able to share my screen here, John?
Should be just a second. Yes, you can share your screen.
Okay. I'll just show you the user dashboard here real quick. Can everybody see that okay?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see here. So yeah, our member dashboard, it allows you to basically watch trains however you want. This specific screen I've got now has nine cameras at once. Which if you've got the computing power, it's great. If you're watching on your phone, you probably just want to stick to one, but it definitely gives you plenty of options. You can switch them around and save these custom lists. In fact, the camera the camera here in view is one of our latest cameras, and it actually a funny story how we got that. We ran into the conductor on the California Zephyr coming back east. And between this spot where the camera is in Denver, we had met Brad, waved to his wife up there at the top, and showed up about 2 months later to put this camera in. This particular camera sits at about 7,000 feet and gets the entirety of the Big Ten curve. So once a train comes into view here, we can follow it for probably, I don't know, better part of 20 minutes or so. You can kind of see a meet happening down here below. And most of these cameras have operators. So as you can see, I'm not doing this. It's one of our camera operators that, from somewhere, I'm not sure who it is. But they're able to zoom in, catch details. I know a lot of the modeler folks, especially when our operators zoom in on locomotive details, are like, oh, gee, thanks. Really appreciate that. That was something I've always wondered about. And but yeah, you can see, this camera here is, like I said, sits up about 7,000 feet on the Front Range of the Rocky Mountains. There's a siding that we can start to see trains about 8 miles from here, and the camera can zoom right to it, it's pretty incredible. So, both for modelers and just general train enthusiasts, we encourage you to check it out. Plenty of free cameras on YouTube, but if you want that extra level, it's our memberships. We just dropped to about $4.99 a month. So definitely thank you guys. And of course, if you have any questions, I'm certainly happy to answer them best I can.
Just to confirm then, the subscription is how much?
We just recently dropped the subscription to $4.99 a month, so you get everything. We're adding a TV app, apps for your tablet, smart TV, phones, and hopefully sometime later this year we'll also incorporate our Virtual Railfan TV, which is basically right now it's set up as like a Netflix for trains. So you can watch all the old publishers, Green Frog, Sea Vision, tons of the old railroad documentaries. And we hope to incorporate that into the membership later this year.
It's funny, Mike, that you mentioned Netflix, because that's exactly what I was thinking. I was actually going to make a joke about, hey, be careful, boys and girls, this stuff is addictive.
It is.
I have found in particular that I really enjoy the cameras that are in places that I've been to before.
Yes.
Tower 55 in Fort Worth is a favorite train watching spot for me when I'm off working. And so I've had that on many times in the background, and before you know it, you've been watching it for a long time.
I definitely feel your pain. And a lot of our cameras are in areas that are just great, both for the trains and for the stuff to do. So
Yeah.
another benefit about, these train cameras is there's a huge economic benefit too if it goes in, because our viewers, they show up sometimes within hours of the camera going, being installed, but
Yeah.
they definitely show up, and it's a great community too. It's almost like
That-
Cheers.
You're also reminding me, I was listening to a podcast in the last month or so, and the fellow who was being interviewed was talking about building out his models by using, products like yours to document numbers and graffiti. So his sort of model, his mental model was he only wanted to have things in his roster that he could actually see in the real world. Car
We get a
numbers,
lot of that. We
certain
get a
kinds
lot
of
of modelers.
graffiti.
We get a lot of modelers that will go back and use the DVR footage, because like I said, you can go back 10 days, but
Yeah.
they'll look for those still shots of certain freight cars that have, either wild graffiti or something, out of the norm, and they can use that and build their models from that.
And do you still have some I don't know, free cameras or a trial? There's a way that people can kind of test it out.
Yeah, check out, our YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and just type in virtual railfan, we've got, I think, over 30 cameras that are constantly up on YouTube.
Okay.
And eventually, even the cameras that are behind the paywall, those get rotated out, and that service will get expanded here in the next, I'd say, couple months, where there'll be a lot more cameras added to the camera of the week lineup or the camera of the month lineup. So,
Okay.
if you have a spot and you like it, but you're not sure, it'll always come up eventually, based on the votes and whatnot. The camera of the month will change.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. I know I really enjoy it, and I bet some other people will too.
Yeah, I hope you guys do, and definitely appreciate you having us on today.
Thanks again. All right, super. Yeah, if you haven't checked that out, do that. I would recommend it highly. Go to the YouTube channel, test it out, see if it's for you, whether something you have a specific kind of thing you want to check out, or you just want to have trains running in the background all the time. That's fantastic. All right, super. All right, let's move on to our next piece of today's program, and that is the Arduino Fast Clock with Thomas Rackers. Thomas?
Okay, I'm going to send a link to the chat channel, which will be useful shortly, but there it
Okay.
is. So everybody should have that, and you'll want to refer to that perhaps later. Okay, name's Thomas Rackers. I'm currently a member of the TRAK, Richmond area NRail, based primarily out of Ashland, Virginia, which has three of those virtual railfan cameras. Which we got a brief glimpse of there. And also a current member, although past president of Japan Rail Modelers of Washington, D.C. If you see something here that looks like there's a Japanese reference, well, that's my fault. Okay. So I'm going to try and squeeze this in 20 minutes, or according to my fast clock here, which I just started, that'll be 8 hours. Okay,
Yes, sir.
so fast clocks, basically a clock that's going to run faster than real time, which is useful for operations, special effects, and such. And these are based on using Arduinos, which are fairly easy to get a hold of and to work with. So there we go. Okay, why fast clocks? Basically, because with our model railroads, we can scale the size of our buildings, of our trains, and such. Not distance so much. In N scale, if you wanted to have a scale mile, it'll take 33 feet of track. If you wanted 10 miles, well, that's pretty much a football field plus one end zone. So it's kind of hard to cram that into a building, especially if you want to have your distances even farther apart. So we scale the distances down, but our trains are running at scale speed. So what do? Well, you shorten the time by speeding up the clock. And so that's your fast clock. Okay, now why Arduinos? because you can get them, and I've got 4 or 5 of them sitting on the table with me right now, which I'll show you those. But they're easy to, if you have just a little bit of experience, and you can start at the hobby level with these, putting them together, making them blink lights, do other things. You can get very sophisticated with a little bit of time, a little bit of work, and a little bit of programming and such. So, okay, who is Arduino? Well, Arduino is a company in Italy. I don't remember the city. That's not critical right now. But they developed microcontroller boards, which they called, cleverly enough, Arduinos. And the first one, or maybe not the first one, but the one that became the most popular on the market is called the Arduino Uno, which is the top half. Oh, you can't see that. I have to momentarily unshare the screen. Okay, gotta switch to the camera. Okay, the part on the top is an Arduino Uno, and it's fairly compact. You could plug the wires into the connectors at the top and the bottom here, prototype circuits here, or you can get things called shields, which are about the same size, and plug in to the top and give you more interfaces, like a motor driver or an Ethernet interface or such. So it's very expandable. You power it, sorry, wrong way, through the USB port, which is also how you program it. Or you can power it, if you're not programming it, through the power jack here. So this is your Arduino Uno. This is more as a starting point. There are a couple of Arduinos that are bigger than that, more memory and such. We're not going to worry about that right now, because bigger isn't always better. So let me share the screen again. Here we go. Next time I hit the share button. Okay, so now Arduino were the first ones to come out, but it was made open source. So there are a lot of other companies who have built their own cards that are basically the same shape, the same interface and such. Some of them, and it will run the exact same code too, sometimes with very, very slight changes. But come on, it's not, there are also a lot of Arduino compatible processors. They're not the same size, they're not the same shape and such. They'll still run the same code, but they're more compact. And these are very handy for if you're doing something model railroad, like such as putting them inside of buildings where you're going to animate the lights, or if you can put them in T-TRAK modules to, say, operate a turntable, which is one of my projects. You could put them in handheld devices, like maybe your own custom DCC controller, etc. And I believe this is, okay, I already gave you the link to this. So the codes that we're going to see can be found on here. So if either now or later you want to follow along with that. How am I doing on time? It's so far 2 hours and 4 minutes. Okay, now what do you need to do? How do you make a fast clock? Okay, the things you've got to have. You got to have a piece of code that can step the minutes and roll over on the hour, and after 24 hours, roll that over too. So we'll see that in a bit. You have to have some sort of time base that advances the minutes and hours at some rate that you want. Doesn't have to be really precise, unless you're really nitpicky or sort of obsessive compulsive, like I sometimes get and such. But you need something to advance time on a regular basis. And then to be useful, you need to either display this time in some way for the people, so now you have a fast clock that you can see, or trigger something happening around the layouts, like when the sun sets, the lighthouse over in the corner turns on or such. Or you can do both. Okay, what might you want to add also? You might want to have some buttons or switches so you can set the starting time. If you're going to do operations, we're going to start at 6 a.m. in fast time. You might want to be able to start, stop, reset the clock. You might want to adjust the speed of the fast clock. Well, today we're going to run it at say 6 times fast rate. The common speeds people use are 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12. 2 is just kind of slow, and faster than 12 is a little silly. Well, what you're going to see me running here are silly because my demos are run at 24 times real time. So a 24-hour day takes 1 hour on our clock to go by. Now, you also might want to output signals to other things like remote displays spread around on the walls in your layout space, or systems that you're controlling. It's entirely up to you. That's the nice thing about Arduino is just expanding what you're connecting to is not difficult. Okay, code. Now, I don't know how many people here have ever written code, so follow along with me. This is the part where we have to have a piece of code that advances time. So just try and follow the dancing cursor, assuming you can see that. We have a couple of variables, little pieces of memory that hold the hour and a minute, which we start off in this case at 0. That happens once. And in this piece of code, oops, sorry, too far. I gotta be careful not to click. Okay, so we have a piece of code. So repeatedly, we'll say, add 1 to the minutes. If the minutes hit 60, well, now we'll do this part in here. We will set the minutes back to 0 and add 1 to the hours. If the hours hit 24, well, we got to do the same thing. We set it back to 0. That's all we have to do. Once we've gone through that, we have advanced time. And then we have some piece of code that generates our outputs and give it, here's the hour, here's the minute. And it will do whatever it needs to. Then we have a piece of code that waits 1 fast clock minute. So for the little thing that I have running here right now that's timing me, that is 2.5 seconds becomes 1 scale minute. Okay, little thing I should point out, this is because back in 1970, when I first started coding, I had to be told this, it wasn't clear. This is assignment. It doesn't really mean it's equal. It means we're going to do this. We're going to add 1 to this value, mn, minutes, and then put the result back into mn. 2 equals, this is where we're actually saying, is this mn equal to 60? So that was a lesson I had to learn decades ago. But so you'll see that people who haven't coded like I was back then wouldn't necessarily recognize that. But you'll see that frequently in code, especially the code that Arduino's run. Okay, I'm going to make a little more compact version of this code because if you look at my examples, I do this. This whole thing, let's add 1 to this and then test it, can be replaced with 1 line. This little thing here says, let's take mn, and this means add 1 to it, and then return that new value. So it's a pre-increment. So we're just in 1 line, we say, if we add 1 to this and take that value, is it equal to 60? And we'll do the same thing down here. If we add 1 to hours and it hits 24, do this. So it's a little bit more compact, and my codes use that. So, all right. Okay, now the next thing we need to do, we have to time our code. And I'm at 4 hours and 20 minutes so far. So Arduinos have a clock that runs as soon as it boots up or you set it. And it counts off milliseconds or thousandths of a second since it started. And the code can read that clock by calling this function called millis. The code can actually pause and do nothing, and I mean nothing, by calling delay with a number of milliseconds. Now, the important thing we need to do for our fast clock, to get the fast clock to run, say, 12 times per second, we want to step this clock, that code we were just looking at, faster than once every 60 seconds or 60,000 milliseconds. So we cut that down We're going to divide the 60,000 milliseconds by 12. So that means we need to advance the clock once every 5,000 milliseconds or every 5 seconds. So that's how, so your code does that loop that I was showing you before every 5 seconds. Okay, so how do we do the timing? All right, at this point, I had to pull something else over here. That's not what I wanted. Just a second. I clicked the wrong thing on my other screen. Okay. So can you see this?
Yes.
Everybody see the, all right, good. Okay, this is a piece of Arduino code. It's a fast clock and it's a quick and dirty one. And there's a little routine up here, which is the one that will write the time. We're not actually talking to a display yet, but I'm going to open up a little thing here. Oh, hold on a second. Silly me, forgot to plug one other thing in. I'm plugging in that Arduino Uno that I showed you to the computer so I can actually program it. So now, yes, it is connected. Good. All right, so a piece of code, a little routine here. It's going to write to a window. Here we go. Over there. Okay, so we're going to run 24 times regular speed. And here's the piece of code that I showed you to advance the clock. And this routine called loop is just called repeatedly. Setup is called once, but then it just runs loop over and over and over and over. So in here is my piece of code to advance the clock. And then we call this thing called show time, which will show what the time is. And that was this little thing. It just goes printity, printity, printity. So let's see. We load that code into the Arduino. It'll take a bit of time, maybe 15, 20 seconds. I never timed it. We'll run this piece of code on that Arduino Uno that I showed you. How am I doing on time?
Still doing okay.
Okay. All right. I may not run all of these examples. I have 3 of them. I'll show them, but those are codes that you can see if you go to that GitHub page. All right, so it is starting. You can see over here on the right. Okay, so you can over on the left. This is our time: 7.5 seconds, 10 seconds, and this is what the fast clock is doing: 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes. And there's a little issue here. It's starting to lag a bit. And there's a good reason for that. It's because our code down here that's looping, up here at the top, this is how we time it. We say we delay for interval, which in this case is 2,500 milliseconds. And then we do this stuff and we go back. But this stuff down here takes a little bit of time too. So by the time you delay here and then do this stuff, you're going to take just a wee bit more than 2,500 milliseconds. You can see it's starting to fall behind as a result. Okay, well, how do we fix that? Well, we can make a little tweak to the code. Come on, open up. There we go. This one, it's virtually the same program, but it's called no delay instead of quick and dirty. So it does basically the same sort of thing, printing, but to time, what it does is it repeatedly reads that clock, the millis routine, and it says, well, is it time? And we have got this thing called update at, which we've set for when are we supposed to advance the clock next? And we got that from reading the clock earlier. So is it time? It has now reached the update at time. If so, Then we advance all this and such. And then we change the update at for the next time around. And then we come up here. And so now if we run this instead, and there's build it, debug it. So we avoid using delay because we don't know the stuff is not in delay. We don't know how long they're going to take. It's still useful at times, but not for this. Here we go. And there it goes. All right. So now we'll restart. Now it's accurate. Now it didn't make much difference. I mean, before we'd only been running for a couple of minutes and we only got like 0.04 seconds off. But if you really want something to be accurate, you use a trick like this. Okay. Now I had a third version which does the same sort of thing in a little cleaner way. I'm not going to bother with that right now, but you can see that on if you go to the GitHub, and it uses a thing called a state machine to package all that timing in such a way that it does the same thing, but it looks a little cleaner. And state machines are very useful for other things too. We won't worry about that right now. Okay, so I'm gonna slide those out of the way and go back to the slideshow. Come on. Here we go. Oops, I went too far. My bad. You go back to the camera briefly. Okay, so you've seen the outputting the fast time just to the screen here. Okay, that's not really useful when you're in your train shop and such. So we have smaller Arduinos. This is an Arduino compatible processor here. It's running on a battery. And this is our display. This has been running for a while, since I got here. It's a very tiny screen with very tiny characters, which unfortunately can only show 4 characters at a time, and the colon counts as a 5th one. So, but it's still showing the fast time since I powered this one up. You could use a little bit better processor using, say, switching cables here real quick. I have one USB cable too few. Yep, there we go. Okay, this is another type of Arduino compatible processor. Sorry, it's in this hand. Get in front of the camera. There it goes. And this is the display. It's driving. A little bit bigger. Now okay, this one is made by a company called SparkFun in Colorado. The one I'm going to show you next is made by a company in New York called Adafruit. And this is the one that you saw a bit earlier. Okay, so it's going to start over at 0 again. So this is the processor, the little board here, and much, oops, I got upside down, much bigger, useful display. This would be big enough you could put it in a room. You should be able to see it from across the room as long as it's not a warehouse or something like that. So, but all of these are running the same code, and it's another code that's on that on my GitHub. It is just called Fast Clock, and you can by just changing one of 3 lines, have it drive this display, that display, or the other display. The timing is the same. Only the code that knows how to talk to this type or that type of display changes. So that'd be the kind of thing you'd have to customize for your setup, but it's not difficult. Okay, I'm going to go back to my shared screen.
Looks like we're just about there. A couple more minutes, maybe, Thomas.
Okay, I'll try. This is the importance. This stuff will go quick. If you really get excited, you could go to SparkFun. They've got digits you can buy. They're 6 inches tall, but at $30 per digit, including the electronic part, I wasn't about to go buy examples. Okay, other possible uses of fast clock. I mentioned you could animate lighting or actions on your layout based on the time of day. You could actually make lighting to illuminate your layout to show the passages, the sunrises, the sunsets, such. You really get excited. You could get into animating the whole layout. This is an example of that. This one is in the Kyoto Railway Museum in Japan, and it's a huge N-scale layout. And it's actually not animated, but the interesting thing is the ceiling lights are under control, and they do a 20-minute presentation where the lights come up like the sun is rising, and things power up and start running around. The 20-minute presentation, at the end, the sun's already set and such. Now, that's just for people who like seeing control panels. This is not computerized. This is all manual, but just for fun. Okay, now some real quick references. If you want more information, Arduino has their website. Adafruit has theirs. SparkFun as well. Now there's Arduino groups.io, model railroad related electronics and programming discussions. I just learned about that in the past week. Facebook has a group, Arduino for model railroading. And then Arduino Days happens about once a year, and that's coming up March 21st to 23rd. And I've actually got an event I'm going to be putting on at this very library where I'm sitting right now. We'll worry about that later. And then shameless plug, my blog, which you can get to, just model railroad electronics.blog. And there's way too much information on there because I don't know when to shut up, which I'm probably coming up on right now. And that was it.
Can you put up the website, the Gid whatever website?
The GitHub?
Yeah. Put it on the
Yes.
screen for a few seconds.
While he's getting that, if you're not familiar with the chat feature, you should be able to find that at the bottom of your Zoom screen. There's a little button that says chat. The nice thing about chat is that he put the link in there, so you don't actually have to type anything.
Right.
You
Did it
just
come up
click
on your
the link
screen?
directly from the chat, and that will open it right up on your computer. I know if you haven't done that before, that's a couple of steps you have to learn how to do.
Yeah.
Once you do that, you will never write anything down again.
Now do you see it?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's one of the pages in my GitHub. I've got a bunch of repositories in there, but this is
the address
one
at
that
the
we've
top?
talked about.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
GitHub.com/ my name / in this case fast clock -sketches.
Take a picture of that with your phone. You'll be all set.
That's what I'm doing.
Same address that's in the chat.
But open up the chat and you can click on it and go right to it.
Yes, and you can click on these things. You can look at the individual codes.
I don't know why I don't have a check.
Okay.
It's a little tiny print. Okay, I
Thomas.
think that pretty much covers it.
Thomas,
Any
we really
questions?
there's a comment that if you join the Adafruit page on Facebook, they have a broadcast every Wednesday evening called Ask the Engineer.
Oh,
And
that I didn't know
that
that.
includes a 10% off coupon. So
oh,
there you go, folks.
coupons are handy.
Then Dave Ferrari asked, so if you start at 6 a.m., you set your hour to 6, correct?
Yes, if I wanted my my fast clock to start at 6 a.m., then those first two lines were said int hour equals, I'd make that 6. And I'd leave the M in for minutes to 0, and that would be the time that it starts with, and advance from there.
And then Jerry Hogue asked, how many displays can one Arduino run?
more than I've got fingers. That depends entirely on how you hook them up and such. I have the 3 displays you saw. I have hooked them up on one Arduino at the same time because they just go cable to cable to cable to cable. But yes, you could display multiple ones, or you could spread them out by using some different type of cabling. I used to use like network cables. I had 2 of them at one time that were set up about 15 feet apart.
Okay. All right, John.
All right, super. Yeah, thanks for. I didn't even see those 2 questions, Andy. So thanks for pointing that
I
out.
didn't either. I'll go back.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay, so we appreciate that. Once again, another ZoomTRAK is included math and given me a headache. So I hope that that's balanced out by some of you who this is exactly what you wanted to hear today. All right, onward to T-TRAK design software. And Steve Jackson, I think we've got another video to roll.
Hi there. My name is Steve Jackson, and I am the membership chair for NRail. But today I'm here to present the T-TRAK designer software and how I use it. I use it specifically for T-TRAK, but I'll show you in a little while how to use it for other modular systems like NTRAK. This is going to be a very quick presentation. It's 20 minutes, and the intent is really to show you the highlights of what this very customizable software can do. It's built by Toni Guerrero, and I'm presenting it today because, in part, I'm an avid user of the software, but also because Toni is a native Spanish speaker and not as comfortable in a presentation like this. So I've got a pretty short demonstration here to show you some of the highlights, but if you've got any more information you want, then Facebook is a great place to go to find out some more details about how to use this software. So to access the software, it's free, but you've got to download it through Facebook. So it's in a private group called T-TRAK Designer Software. So if you look for that private group and request to join, then you can actually get access to this particular group, and that's where the software as well as a lot of other files are available. So first off, to get the software, what I usually do is I scroll down and look over here on the right-hand side in the recent files, and usually the most recent version is available here. So this in this case is version 1.5.2. So you would download that zip file, and then we'll open it up, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute as well. You'll also see these TRK files, and these are different files that we've shared with each other that we've created. So in this particular case, one of the users was looking for this sort of a loop. And how do you build a custom file like that? So they built it and it's stored in this TRK file. So you'll see that sometimes these recent files are also TRK files. And people share their other layouts as well, so you can get a sense for what other folks are able to do using this software. There's another one here. This is what somebody else did, and so on. So you basically go back and look at these various versions, and he describes in the versions kind of what they do to modify them as well. So that's how you get access to software. Is you're going to go find this recent file section, look for, if it's not a version here, click see all, but a version is here. You're going to click that file and then download it. So once you've downloaded the file, you've got this zip file that you downloaded from Facebook, as I showed a minute ago. I will note that when you go to download the file, sometimes when Toni posts the file, they post it with an exe inside the zip. Sometimes they change the extension on the end of the file. If there's an exe in there, then chances are your security software is going to give you an alert that there may be a suspicious file. I've never had a problem with that. I've used many versions of this software, but just know that you may get that notice and you have to click ignore and it'll go ahead and download the file. So what I do is I just double click this file and it opens up the zip file. It shows me the file that's inside of there. What I want to do is I want to put that back in this file folder where the zip file was. So I just click it and drag it up there and then drop it into that folder. So now when I go back to that folder, you'll see that there's the zip file, which has this inside, and then the other file next to it. The next thing I like to do is I like to rename the file because there are multiple versions. And on some of my computers, I have more than one version of this software. And I always want to know which one it is just by looking at the file itself. So if you right click the file and go down to rename, then you can add 1.5.2 so that I know which version of this software it is. So once you've got the executable file there, all you have to do is double click it and it'll open up the executable. So I'll maximize the window by clicking up there so I have the whole screen to look at. And basically you've got a pretty standard set of buttons across the top that you'll see in most software. The first three is really about creating a new file, opening a file, or saving a file. There's a print button. There's this properties button we'll use quite a bit, a delete button, a zoom in and zoom out and zoom to page button. And then these arrow buttons allow you to pan across the file. So it'll scoop the diagram, the layout that you build in any direction. These whole series of buttons here that have the sort of maroon background with the yellow writing on top are templates that are included with the software that allow you to basically quickly drop in T-TRAK modules. So you've got a single, double, triple, quad, corner, end loop, etc., in a whole series of basic ones. And it's a great place to get started. Those are really kind of the basic modules that you need to get going. This next module with the button with the circle on it is the turn button. It'll rotate button. It'll rotate the files. And then T is for text. So you can add text to your diagram and then a help file. Most of the same information, as well as a few other functions, are also available in the drop-down menus here. But almost everything you end up needing is really located right here in this button bar. And I've showed you the basic buttons we've got on the top. Let's do a basic, simple layout. So I'm going to do a layout. It's the original layout that I built back about 20 years ago. So I had a single, like I got that by clicking on the one, and then I'm going to put two corners next to it. So I just clicked the two corner modules, another single, and then an end cap. That's the basic layout that I started with. So what I can do now is customize some of these modules to represent a little bit more of reality. So one of these modules, and I'll click it there, I can select the properties. So edit properties, or you can select this properties button. And I'll see that it's a type single straight and it's got a name. And so in my actual module is called Peaceful Crossing. So I can show that here. And I've renamed it, which is great, but it doesn't really mean much. So let me select it again, do the properties again. I want to label it. And to do that, you add a hashtag, # to the front of that label. So when I do that and deselect it now, I can see that it's labeled Peaceful Crossing. So let me select it again. The other feature I wanted to highlight is there's over on the right-hand corner here, the track feeders and DCC panels. So in my case, Peaceful Crossing actually has a DCC panel. So if I click that, it'll update the interface to highlight that it's got a DCC panel there. So I have a visual indicator on that module. Similar to this module on the other side, it actually has power drops. That was my single power drops in the original module. So I can click my properties button, add the track feeders, and you'll see the ± sign. So now I've got this one labeled. I've got this one indicating it's got a DCC panel on it. And this one indicates it's got power drops. So this is the basic layout. So what I can do now is actually, I'm going to select all of these modules. If I want to move them, I'm going to right click. And if you, whatever module you right click from is kind of the anchor for that. So I'm going to right click on this end loop, and now I can see where the end loop is going to end up. So I can drop it over there. And then I could do Control D to unselect. You can see that up here too. Select all and unselect. But Control D is a handy one when you want to just stop, when you had multiple selections, just to clear it all out. So I can move that. The next thing I want to show is how to indicate who the module owners are. So in that case, what I want to do is I want to go to extras and I want to append a participant. And there's the color that I'm using. If I wanted to change colors, I could click it and pick any of the other colors, but this one's fine because it's the color that happens to be the modules I have now. And I'm going to indicate that these modules are Steve J is the name. So what'll happen is it drops that box in there. It says 5. That indicates I have 5 modules that are mine. Since this is my whole layout, it's obvious, but it's a way to show that. And for larger, more complex layouts, it's really a handy feature to be able to do that. You could do it by individual, or if you have a multi-club layout, you could just have them by club, so each club knows what modules are theirs. So what I can do also is the color I mentioned a second ago when I showed that is how you indicate who owns which module. So if I select this corner module, go back to properties, go to color, and And I'm going to select this green color up here, say OK, and OK again, Control D to deselect everything. And now I'll see that that one's green. And this number went down to 4 because now it sees I've got 4 modules and this other one is somebody else's. So I can go back, I can append a participant again. We'll say this is Bob. It's going to drop it right underneath this one, show Bob, and it shows he's got 1 module. So it's the way to basically keep track of quick visual indicators of how many modules each participant in the layout is contributing to your layout. So far, all I've really done is just leverage properties and the basic modules that are already set in the tool itself when I leverage these. So the next thing I want to do is just show you some basic things you can do to customize these modules. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select this Peaceful Crossing module, go back to the properties, and you'll notice the nodes area down here at the bottom. This indicates it basically like a Cartesian XY kind of coordinate system where the points are that describe the box. So the points are at 0, 0, the bottom left, and then 308 is the X and 0 is the Y, so it goes 308 millimeters to the right. Then the next one stays at 308 millimeters to the right, but goes up 300 millimeters. The next one, it goes back to 0x, but 300 millimeters up, and then it'll close the loop with those 4 points. So you're describing this. Now you can use that to describe much more complex modules, but for the basics, this is what you need is 4 points to describe that square. So these modules, the original ones that I built, happen to be built on the original standard, which was 210 millimeters instead of 310. So if I double click that, I can change this to 210. And I'm going to do that to both nodes, because otherwise it'll end up as some sort of odd, shaped object. So that's what I can set for those 2 tracks and for those 2 corners. And so if I say OK, you're going to see that it dropped it down to 210 millimeters tall. And then the other properties I can look at is showing the tracks. So in this case, there are 2 sections that they're called. One goes from -1 to 311. So it's going basically to either end of the module. Now, I particularly prefer to have them be a little more precise, whatever. You can adjust these things basically. So I can say it's going to go from 0 to 210 because you get 310. That's how long the module, the track actually is. And then I can pick section 2. So that's the first one. It's 48 millimeters from the front. That's the distance here to the center point. It's 2 inches to the center, 1.5 inches to the edge of the road bed on that unitrack. And then I'll switch to section 2, and I can do the same thing as adjust 0 and 310 and say OK. Similarly, I can say update this. Although the module is 308 or so, I just like to say 310 just because for the purposes of the diagram, that just feels a little cleaner to me. So I've updated it now to where it has a more realistic depth and adjusted a few of the numbers as well. I can go back. This other module happens to have the exact same dimensionals, so I can change that. It's saying -300 because it's been rotated, but basically you just change that value to 210. I'll change this one to 310. I'll change this one to 310. Change this to 210. So I'm representing a 210, so the 8.25 inch original depth that they had. And then we can update the tracks. Same here. This front track goes from 0 to 310. And the back track goes from 0 to 310. So that basically gives you a more realistic representation of what the modules look like in real life. So this is just customizing the shapes or making it a little more complex. Next, we'll look at creating a module that's very different from scratch. So I've started up a new file. And what I want to do is I want to build a custom module based off of a double. I want to do a double with a spur on it. And I'll have that spur run right next to the original track, the 2 tracks that are there. So inside of that. So the first thing I'll do is I'm going to click that file to select it, open up the properties, and I'm going to go to tracks. And right now you'll see there's two sections that represent the front track and the back track at 48 millimeters from the front and then 81. So what I do is I want to add a new section. So I'm going to append a section. That's the third one. So now you see there's 3, but there are no nodes on it yet. So what I want to do is add the points that represent that track. So let's append a node. The first one I'll say starts at 62 millimeters from the left, which is the end of a standard 62 millimeter track section. And it'll start at 81. It's going to start where that back track is located now. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 5 nodes that for a trick that I've learned. And so I want to show you that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'm going to add one more to represent the left edge of the straight track that I want to include in there. So what I'm going to do is add, I'll double click that. And for the X location, let's do 248. And then for the Y is 114, which is 33 on top of the 81 that was already there. So that's 33 millimeters behind that track. And then one more node to represent the right end of it. And I'm going to go ahead and take that all the way to the end of the module, just in case I want to represent it connecting to another module at some point. So we'll call the X 620, and then we'll call the Y the 114. So now that we've got that set, we'll click OK, and you're going to see I've got a track now that starts there towards the end. It ends up having a straight section here, but there's a whole bunch of points down here in the corner. Those are related to this trick. So I could do the math and have gotten the exact XY locations for every point along these 2 curves, but I don't need it. So why go through that hassle? There's a really cool feature. If I go back to the tracks, select section 3 and do modify position. And when I do that, it has all these points for that 0, 0 down here, and I can do a visual update. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start clicking points and moving them out, just so I can get them out of that corner and then start to figure out what I'm working with. All right, so this is the middle one of those fifths. So I'll just kind of put that with the 5. I'll put that sort of in the middle there. And then I'll add these 2 here and move these 2 kind of here, representing a bit of a more gradual curve than what we had before. And sometimes, like now, I've got all these things bunched up so that they're difficult. You can also just sort of quit that, bring them back, try all over again. When they get too close to the same position, it's difficult to adjust their location. But there we go. So that's your siding. So now if I push the escape key, I get back out of that. OK, OK, and boom. Now I have a module that has that spur track right next to the 2 inside tracks. And now I can save this as a TRK file. So I'm going to save as Steve J doubled with siding and say, OK, yes, I want to replace it. And so now I have this module saved all by itself. What I did is I saved it with my name in the front and the descriptor. Sometimes I'll use the names. These are now like a template that I can use. So if I close this particular layout file and it bounces off to this other layout file that I had a minute ago, where I had the original layout that I built, I want to add that double to this layout. So I'm going to first off move these 2 corners out of the way. And then I'm going to take this module, I'm going to rotate it and then relocate it up here. So again, I'll use the shift or the control key, whichever one makes it work right, to put it there. And I want to put that double here opposite these 2 singles that I have in there. So now what I can do is go to library, append modules to the layout. I'm going to select that Steve J double with siding file. And boom, there it is. So now I'm going to select that, right click, move it over here, control or shift, whichever one works, and drop it into place. And now what I want to do is move these 2 modules back. So I click on those 2, control or shift, whichever one works, try to match those up. And now I have this layout with that double module that I just created in here because I brought that in as a template. Now I can save this whole layout in order to save it off for later. So if I'm doing like a particular train show, I can save it with the date file or something like that. So now I can do save. Right, so file, save as, and I'm going to save this as my test layout TRK. So I'll replace the file that was already there. And now I've got this file that I've saved and I can open up and reuse over and over again. So I could use that TRK file both to save template modules that I can then bring in through the library function there, or I'd use to save the whole layout itself. So as I've mentioned previously, I've created a bunch of these TRK files to reflect specific modules that members of my club have constructed, so that when I load them into the layout, I get a sense to make sure I understand where the spacing of the modules are and that they aren't going to have any conflicts or run into each other, and also exactly how large they are. So, we've got the yard module here, a couple of different sort of balloon throats that folks have built, S-curve modules, a super large corner that uses 28-inch curves. We've got these two junctions that are based on triples that come out, and so you can go straight through or pull out through there. We've got one of them is deeper than the other. So again, to make sure I understand when I'm putting that in the layout, what that would look like. Super skinny bridge, standard single with a double crossover on it. And then I'm using that down arrow, up arrow here, but then there's this big yard that we have. So this is a triple, two doubles, and another triple, so a 10x equivalent yard. So we could build some pretty complex custom modules and then just use that library append feature in order to bring those. I promised that it was also applicable to other module formats. So I have built TRK files for NTRaK modules as well. So I can append a NTRaK POF, what my club calls them. It's plain old 4-footer. And I also can construct import a 3-foot corner that I have here as well. So you can get a sense for kind of how these work. So, there's a double. So clearly these things are bigger, right? These are scale representations of the different module formats. Let me get rid of that T-TRAK modules, push the delete key. And then what I can do is start to move these around a little bit. So let me bring in some additional corner module. So select the one I want. Let's go ahead and rotate that around. And then I'll right click it and just look at trying to lock it in. So in this case, I can't get the control and shift to lock it in the way I want, but I can actually just sort of visually see, because it provides that nice outline. That was a new feature in the most recent version. And then I can move this module. We'll see if the shift control works there. So that's the straight module there. And I can continue to add modules. You can see and plan that out as well. Thank you for your time today. I hope you enjoyed this brief high-level overview of some of the features of this software. If you want to know more, as I mentioned earlier, Facebook is a great place to go to get information. You can share and learn from each other there, and then also suggest features. If there's things that you wish the software did or had questions about how to use it, Tony's great about interacting through Facebook as well. So thank you again very much for your time. I appreciate it and hope that you're able to use the software, that this was useful information. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. That was a good presentation. There were a number of questions along the way that were in the chat, but I think he answered almost every one of them during the presentation. Does anybody else have a question here?
While people are asking questions, because I think actually Toni, I didn't see it, but I thought I saw Toni was going to be in here too. But Steve will answer any questions. But I'm going to launch this this poll while everybody's answering questions or asking questions.
Anybody got a question while the poll's coming up?
Does it work on Apple Macs?
The answer to that, I think, was no, right? It only works on Windows.
Yeah, it's a Windows-only application. I think following the theme of today, though, I think it's written in C++, so seeing a lot of that.
So Steve, when did they add when did Toni add that snap feature so it would snap together using shift or control? Is that always?
It's been there quite a while, so I'm not exactly sure what version that got added in. There's now a version 1.5.3 because I recorded that video a week ago, and then he created a new version this week. And 1.5.3 adds the ability, there's the tables underneath the layout. It updated how you can move and snap those together as well. And he also added American tables because originally they were all in millimeters. I mean, they're all in millimeters under the hood, but he added a 2.5, a 30-inch by 6-foot table, as well as a 30-inch by 8-foot table. That way we've got those available since that's the more common American tables.
And now the IT in me is going to come out. So when you download the, and I already know the answer, but when you download the newer version, the updated version, how do you do an update?
It's really not an update because it doesn't actually install. It's just an exe. So you just, as soon as you run the newer version, you can just go grab the same files you've been using and just load them in.
So do you have to grab your old libraries and move it to the new version, or?
No, as soon as you just say open, you just navigate to wherever those TRK files are located and you just use them. So it's nice because it's not really truly an install. So
Okay. Because I have a fair amount of like modules in my library, and I don't, nobody wants to lose those, or you have to try to go figure out where they were at. So
yeah, I have a directory, so I have them for a bunch of the guys in my club. So I think I'm north of 50 of them now that are customized, that are just all different shapes and sizes. And it's nice to be able to lay them out and make sure the math works and that they're not going to bump into each other before I get to the show.
Mhm.
And yeah, I create new ones as I need to. Our club has over 100 modules amongst the members, but I just create them as I go. But I've got them all stored in one particular folder. So every time I open a new version, I just go look in that same folder and then I put them by name. So I have like mine say Steve J and then whatever the name of the module is. That way I can go grab them. And even to the point that some of my members, they'll have two modules might package together, and I'll end up putting those together in one file. So when I load them in, they both show up because I know they're going to travel together. And if the guy brings them to the show, that's what I'm going to get.
Somebody was using the whiteboard.
Fantastic.
So, you can put do you have to load up the T-TRAK exe? Do you have to load it up in the same directory?
Nope, put them anywhere you want.
Okay. And can you put the .trk files, can you put them on someplace like a Dropbox or something in the cloud, and then you could use it basically anywhere?
That's exactly what I do. I actually have them on my Google Drive, so I just have that mapped on my computer. So whatever computer I'm using, I can just reach out to, for the purposes of this display, I actually loaded them local on a machine, but usually I just have them mapped to a Google Drive so that they're always in the same, any computer can use them.
Good.
Andy, you seem to be using up your allotment of questions today.
Hey, well, there's stuff that doesn't get asked sometimes. People get shy and they don't ask the question, so you may as well ask it.
Fantastic. Absolutely. Anybody else? Well, it sounds like we're there.
Yeah, I've got a question. This is Drew Cannon. Are there Mac versions that you can draw layouts in?
Anybody got I have used what is the program for Mac? Railroad Modeler Pro, but it's not a T-TRAK specific thing like this.
You can build
Rail Modeler Pro. And,
you can build a module and Rail model it pretty easily.
So there are a couple of options there.
Yeah. For years, I used Visio. I think there's probably a whole lot of different places you could. I think for me, the key is being able to build those templates.
Right.
That you've got them sized right and that they represent whatever you're really looking at.
Yeah. Well, Steve, for years, I created and managed, when I was an NRail layout coordinator, I just had a PowerPoint thing with a bunch of, colored blocks in it. And that worked fine in terms of, the blocks, but that doesn't do you any good in terms of designing modules. So this is kind of cool because you can begin to sort of put the track on there. I've been working on a Fremo module, which is more freeform using that Rail Modeler Pro, but I'm not very good at it. So what I can draw on a piece of paper with a pencil is taking me several hours to figure out how to recreate. But once you get there, then it really does become a useful tool.
NRail is considering creating part of their program to be more T-TRAK friendly for creating modules. It's a work in progress currently. So exactly where it's going to go and what it's going to look like, I don't know.
Okay. Well, thank you all for.
I started Rail Modeler modules, making them in Rail Modeler, just, track, and you can group them together. But it got too fiddly for our small club that didn't really need it. So I didn't keep going with it, but it was pretty easy to do and pretty handy. You can click them together pretty easily with Rail Modeler.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining ZoomTRAK on a Saturday afternoon. We appreciate your attendance. Keep coming. Keep asking questions. If you have something you'd like to present, raise your hand and jump in. Otherwise, we will see you right back here next month.
Thanks again, John.
Okay.
Great job.
Thank you, John. Great session.
Good to see you out there, Tony.